I'm Marcus Benjamin bringing you the Benjamin Report. And Miami lost its third game of the season, 20-6, to NC State. And I wanted to take a moment to really kind of reflect on the situation. And there's no other solution to this problem that Miami has offensively other than to bench TVD. TVD's reign here at the University of Miami at quarterback needs to end. I think it's time to move on. It's time for Miami to start looking towards the future. And I think in this next game, you really got to start to look at the options that you have at quarterback. Obviously, you have Emory Williams, and you still have a Jakari Brown who you could play without burning his red shirt. But let's talk about TVD, man. 21 of 38, 173 yards, 55% completion percentage. He was just abysmal out there. And I think just kind of mentally, he's kind of broken at this point because when you see him in the pocket, he is just not assertive, and when he does try to push it down the field, he's often forcing it into coverage and making interceptions. I mean, this guy he threw three interceptions last night and also had a fumble as well. I mean, even the turf monster put him on the ground for a sack. He's definitely just out of sorts. And last week, I think myself and many were probably just giving him the excuse of that maybe he's hurt or maybe the injury is really the reason why he is unable to throw the football down the field accurately. And last night was evidence of him not only just being healthy because he was able to kind of run out of the pocket so much, but it was evidence to everyone that the injury is not the excuse here, and there aren't any excuses here to for TVD's play, and there aren't any excuses for this coaching staff to continue with this quarterback. I think it's just time to move on. I mean, let's first just talk about his decision making. I mean, in the last game, he was pushing it down the field and forcing it into coverage. This time, you can tell he made an effort to check it down, and he dare I say it, but he checked it down just way too much in this game, and he was just in the pocket. It felt like he could make a cup of coffee in the pocket at times. That's how much time he had in the pocket, yet he couldn't find open receivers. Kobe Young was running down the field open. There were times where Brashard Smith was also open. I'm gonna get more. I'm gonna have more on Brashard Smith in this game, but this is definitely not an injury issue for Tyler Van Dyke. This is a mental issue for Tyler Van Dyke. He's definitely in his head way too much. And at this point, you have to pull him. You have to pull him from the game last night. Miami should have pulled him in the second half. In that second half, we should have saw Emory Williams. I would have been happy to see even a combination of Emory Williams and Jakari Brown in the game just to change it up, just to show NC State something different. And we didn't see him. Tyler Van Dyke is clearly not the guy. I mean, it's starting to be evident for me that his run in 2021 was just an anomaly. I think that was just for the simple fact that other teams didn't have much tape on him, and this was Rhett Lashley's guy. and Rhett Lashley knew how to kind of accentuate his skill sets. And now that teams have plenty of tape on him, they know how to play against him. And there's no solution but to pull him and to bench him from this point forward. And after the season, Miami definitely needs to go into the portal. They need to look at some different options at quarterback because at this point, starting TVD does not give you the best chance to win. Mario Cristobal always has said that TVD gives the Miami Hurricanes the best chance to win, and that hasn't been the case. And you kind of saw a clear difference from the position when you saw Emory Williams in there. Emory Williams was a game manager. And I've said this before on previous podcasts that Tyler Van Dyke just needs to be a game manager and not lose the game at this point because this defense, this running game, this offensive line is good enough for Miami to win games. It can be an ugly, muck it up, muddy type of game for Miami to continue to stack up wins. What you can't have is turnovers. What you can't have is indecision from your quarterback. What you can't have is a quarterback that is mentally broken at this point. And that's basically what I see from Tyler Van Dyke. And the first goal of the season was to become bowl eligible, and they've achieved that goal. The next goal would be to make it to the ACC championship game, and that is obviously off the table at this point. So, what do you really have to play for at this point besides, pride and just a better bowl game? So, at this point, you should go with the future of your program because Tyler Van Dyke to me is not going to be in the future of the program. My guess is that they do go into the portal and they go with the quarterbacks that they already have on the roster in Brown and Williams. And of course, they're going to bring in Judd Anderson, their quarterback of the 2024 class. And I think that's what you go with. And TVD may have to look elsewhere. He may have to join some of his other classmates at SMU and see if he can revitalize his career. Besides the abysmal quarterback play, I do want to say that Miami still had a chance to win this game. And with it being 4th and 1 inside their own 10, and even with Tyler Van Dyke playing as bad as he was, Miami only had to get a yard. And you bring in an offensive coordinator like Shannon Dawson to have some creativity in your offense. And he's shown that he can be creative, especially inside the 10. We saw this against Texas A&M, where he had some creativity and previous games as well. Everybody in the stadium kind of knew that the only thing that Miami had going against NC State was Mark Fletcher running the ball. The true freshman had a career high last night. But I think everybody, including that NC State defense, knew, okay, Mark Fletcher is their best bet. That's their bread and butter in this game. Let's make sure we stop that. So at this point, I would think that they would try something creative and maybe do a play action pass and a dump off to a tight end. Kobe Young was actually wide open on the play, or just try something a little different than just, okay, we're just going to run up the middle with Mark Fletcher. So it was disappointing to see that that was the play call with the game on the line. If they convert on that play, this could be a totally different outcome. And then, maybe you have some more momentum going into Florida State. But Dawson, unable to get a yard at that point, was just extremely, extremely disappointing. Also, I'm extremely disappointed to see that Brashard Smith was a non-factor in this game again. Against Clemson, we kind of saw him come out of the backfield several times, and he broke off an 80-yard run in that game. And we're like, okay, this is going to be a new wrinkle of the offense. He is your most explosive player. Why not utilize him? Why not utilize him on some jet sweeps or some inside zone like you did against Clemson? Really disappointed to see them go away from that in these last two games. Where is Brashard Smith? And this guy is obviously a running back, by nature. I watched him at Miami Palmetto for several years be dynamic as a running back, continue to utilize him as a running back, just as NC State has with Kevin Concepcion. It's basically the same type of player, but Miami not utilizing him, especially when your passing game is looking as anemic as it is. It's time to start using the speed that is actually on this football team in Brashard Smith. It was really puzzling to me that he had only one target in this game, which of course TVD overthrew in the end zone. It's just baffling to me that they have gone away from their one of their most dynamic playmakers in this game. You got to give him the ball. You got to get him more touches. And I'm just really disappointed in Dawson not going back to Brashard Smith, especially with the game last week where you went away from him, and the offense struggled to move the football. The only thing going in this game was Mark Fletcher. And what Mark Fletcher proved to me is something that I always thought about him throughout his high school career, is that this guy is an every down back, and he could definitely be, a high round NFL pick when his career is all said and done at the University of Miami. Catch the ball out of the backfield well, and he can run in between the tackles well. He can get outside. It was the only thing going for this University of Miami offense. So kudos to Mark Fletcher running his heart out last night. But sadly, that was the only thing going for this offense. And like I alluded to before on that 4th and 1, the NC State defense knew it. The NC State defense knew, okay, this is the only thing that Miami has going is Mark Fletcher running up the middle. And what do? You just run Mark Fletcher up the middle on 4th and 1 with the game on the line, with this potentially the season on the line, potentially maybe the ACC championship on the line, because who knows what can happen. You have Louisville on the schedule. You have Florida State on the schedule. So you could potentially win out and maybe sneak into an ACC championship game if you're able to get a win against NC State. But Dawson and the offense blew it at that point. And the defense, kudos to this defense. This defense kept this team in the game as they have for the past two games against Virginia and Clemson. And most people might say, okay, well, they gave up the last touchdown at the end. I mean, this defense was probably broken at that point, just like TVD was. And I think there's only so much that you can ask from this defense. I mean, this defense pretty much shut down a very dynamic player in Kevin Concepcion last night. Their quarterback actually had a probably you could say a worser game than Tyler Van Dyke. So that's saying a lot. So this defense did enough, and it's been doing enough for this team to win. And Miami dominated also in time of possession in this game. And if I could use a soccer reference, this is basically false possession. You have the ball for 35 minutes compared to NC State's 24, but yet you couldn't do anything with it. So at this point, you really, I mean, most people will maybe point to James Williams not wrapping up on that one play, but I think that there's many other mistakes that you could say and point to with Tyler Van Dyke in this offense rather than that one play that James Williams missed on the tackle that ended up, allowing that touchdown, which ultimately kind of clinched the game for NC State. But back to this offense, man. 1 of 3 in the red zone, 4 of 15 on third down. It was just, truly abysmal from this offense. And at this point, TVD now becomes a DVD that you just kind of put on the shelf. You kind of reminisce on, okay, the good times of when you used to watch that DVD, but nobody watches DVDs anymore. And I think Miami Hurricanes fans don't want to see a TVD anymore. And I tend to agree with the fan base at this point because he does not give you the best chance to win. So it's time to move on. And I do want to say that my Miami and Mario Cristobal has done a great job in recruiting. Obviously, Ruben Bain is an outstanding talent, I talked about Mark Fletcher. You've got Francis Malanoa. They've done a great job in getting transfers in Kiko Malanoa and Jaden Davis and Daryl Porter and just it goes on and on. Just the transfers that they were able to get. Matt Lee, Javion Cohen. These are outstanding acquisitions that this team was able to get in a span of 2 years. And I could keep going on with the number of players that we'll see in the future for this team. But let's not fool ourselves. The most important position is quarterback. And if you don't hit on the quarterback, then you just have a bunch of good players on a football team. And that's what Miami has right now. They have a bunch of good players on a football team, but no quarterback. And you can have, maybe a top 10, top 5 class, but if you don't hit on the quarterback, what do you really have? So hoping that Miami hits on a quarterback in the portal at this point, or Judd Anderson or Emory Williams or Jakari Brown ends up being a guy that this team can trust offensively to get a first down with his legs, to not force the ball, to not turn the ball over. Those 3 things is what you need from the quarterback from this point forward because this team is talented enough. This team has plenty of NFL players on the team. Leonard Taylor's NFL player, Cameron Kinchin's NFL player, James Williams, NFL player, Javion Cohen, NFL, Matt Lee, Francis Malanoa, Francisco Malanoa, Ruben Bain. All of these players are NFL caliber type of players, except the quarterback at this point. The quarterback would be lucky to be drafted to the USFL at this point. would be lucky because it's just been abysmal. And I do want to say that at this point, it's going to take some time for Miami to get back to the glory days. It's going to take some time because that quarterback position, even if you do, start Emery or start Jakari, I don't think they're quite ready for the big time yet. But you got to see what you got in those guys at this point. You got to see what you have for the future, for next year, for the QB competition next year, because at this point, Tyler Van Dyke is just it's setting the program back at this point. And next week you play Florida State, and it's a huge game. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, and at this point, you just don't want to get embarrassed because obviously it's going to be a televised game, probably in prime time. I haven't seen if the time is kind of if come out as of yet, but at this point, you got to start looking towards the future for this football team because offensively, it's just not up to par, and I think you have to start looking towards the future with this team because you're going to play the two best teams right now in the ACC in back-to-back weeks, and in FSU and Louisville. And I do not believe, from what I've seen, that Tyler Van Dyke gives you the best chance to win. So why not see what you have in Emery? Why not see what you have in Jakari and move on from Tyler Van Dyke? NC State is a perfect example of a team realizing, okay, the QB that we have or that we started at the beginning of the season is not the guy. Brennan Armstrong was a transfer from Virginia who transferred to NC State, who was not producing to the level that they wanted their quarterback play to produce. And what did they do? They made a change. They changed from a Brennan Armstrong to an MJ Morris. And yeah, that must be heartbreaking for a Brennan Armstrong because he's in his sixth year of eligibility and he decided to transfer to, of course, up his draft stock. And what did NC State do? They made a tough decision. They decided to go with the future of their program in an MJ Morris. Now, MJ Morris obviously is going to go through some growing pains. Last night he went through some growing pains because he wasn't effective at all against that Miami defense. That Miami defense pretty much shut down MJ Morris. But at least they know what kind of quarterback they have for the future. They weren't going to waste this year with a Brennan Armstrong from what they saw earlier in the season. And what else did they do? They still use Brennan Armstrong, in different packages. He converted a first down that potentially helped them seal the game. So I'm not saying you're going to use Tyler Van Dyke in those type of packages, but my point is that they made the decision to bench Brennan Armstrong. And now it's time for Miami to make that type of executive decision. It's time for Miami to move on from Tyler Van Dyke and see what you have for the future. You've already made a bowl game, so you've achieved that goal. So the rest of these wins are kind of window dressing at this point for me. I mean, making a bowl game, and I think that's for most Hurricanes fans as well. a 6-win season versus a 7 to an 8-win season. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't make a huge difference. So you're going to go to a bowl game anyway. The goal at this point is to kind of see what you have, throw the entire playbook at Florida State and Louisville to see if you can build some momentum in not only recruiting but for next season. And then it's all about that bowl game. You want to definitely win that bowl game and then end this season on a high note. And I've been reiterating this throughout this live session here, instant reaction to this game. But it's time for Miami to move on. It'll be very interesting to hear what Coach Cristobal and the staff have to say on Monday on the direction that they're going to go. My guess is that they're going to remain candid about it. But we'll see what happens on Saturday in Tallahassee. Miami now 6-3 and will play the best team in the ACC, a team that's already clinched an ACC championship. And we'll see. We'll see what Miami does at that point. But that is going to wrap it up for the Benjamin Report instant reaction to Miami's 20-6 loss to NC State.